Hi, my name is Todd Bigelow. Thanks for stopping in. This is just a short informal video series on business topics for freelance photographers. I've been a freelancer for 30 years. I'm a contributing photographer to Contact Press Images. I'm an adjunct professor of photography and photojournalism, the founder of the Business of Photography Workshop, and most recently, the author of the Freelance Photographer's Guide to Success Business Essentials. Thanks for stopping in, and I hope you enjoy the series. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping back by, and if this is your first time joining me, I appreciate it, and hopefully this will help. Pretty much a no-frills talk about the business side of freelance photography as it relates mostly to corporate editorial nonprofit work. So a lot of the things that I talk about, those of you that have watched and subscribed for some time now, know that the experience has come mostly from, what I've done, what I've experienced for the last 25 to 30 years as a freelancer. But I'm also a pretty voracious reader, so I have subscriptions to a number of publications in addition to, our normal publications like the LA Times, New York Times, and Washington Post, and a few others. I love business news because I think there are so many things that we can draw from, those in the normal business world, so to speak, those that are running, retail outlets and big corporations and so forth, that we can take and we can apply to our own business. And that's how I want to kind of start today's talk, and I'll try to keep it pretty short. So yesterday I was reading on Business Insider, one of the former CEOs of GroupOn, who was a CEO of GroupOn in Spain, had one of those little kind of 6 tips or half a dozen tips to how to grow your business. And I want to take just a few of those because they definitely relate to freelance photojournalism. I just held my workshop at UCLA 2 weekends ago, and the first point was one of the topics that I spoke about pretty much right at the beginning, and I gave kudos to those that took the time to show up and spend a whole weekend learning. So the first tip that the CEO of Groupon talked about in this Business Insider story was to seek out training. So he specifically said, quote, at 25, you have the appetite but not the experience to run a business. Okay, so I think it goes beyond 25. I have a 26-year-old son. I know he has an appetite and a real desire to grow in his own field, not journalism, but he's just beginning that experience level. And that'll probably go on well into his 30s. I think it continues well until, I'm 25, 30 years into this business, 57 years old. And I can tell you, I'm still learning. And I know that's the case for a lot of my friends and colleagues out there. So I jump on webinars. I did one a couple of weeks ago. It actually had to do with investments. But again, I draw a lot of inspiration from that as well. So seek out training is a really important part as we grow. But particularly for those of you that are younger, don't at all ever assume that everything you needed to know you perhaps gained from your college courses or from your university degree. Obviously, that's not the case. You maybe didn't get experience in drone photography, or you didn't get enough experience in documentary when that's the direction you want to go. Maybe you got a little taste of it, but you definitely need to kind of gain more training, and particularly, of course, with business side of freelancing. So seek out training was the CEO's first point, CEO of Groupon's first point in addressing ways to grow your business. And I definitely concur, because I think that the business side of freelancing is left off in many, many, many programs, and it's kind of left up to the freelancers to figure out how it's done. So seek that training, whether it's in workshops, whether it's through open enrollment university programs, specific courses in marketing, specific courses in advertising, specific courses in client development, whatever the case might be. But seek out that training. Second point he made was make sure there's a market for your goods, for your service, for your product. He said, quote, people worry about a name or a logo. I made that mistake also, he said. I've had students that have come up with pretty cool names and opened up websites, and then they wonder what to do. So first of all, make sure there's a market for your goods. We know as freelancers there is a market, but do you know where that market is? Do you know if that market is specifically, growing for photojournalists? Is it shrinking for photojournalists? Is it expanding in other types of photography? I present statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics on things like where there is growth. I present those in my workshop, where there is growth in photography. And I can assure you, you can look these things up on your own, that there is growth always in portrait photography. There is a need for corporate photography, advertising. There is always a need, hopefully, always, for news photography. But, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which tracks these things as a governmental agency, does definitely project a shrinking demand for that. And of course, shrinking staff positions, but that also means sometimes when there's shrinking staffs, there's more work for freelancers. But the point being that when you have a service that you bring to market, you need to know where that market is growing and where it's shrinking, and if your service is going to be in demand. So do your research. As I've said in many of my other talks, you should diversify. Okay, so whereas I was in editorial photography, by and large, almost exclusively 20 years ago, I definitely branched out of that to develop clients in strictly portrait photography and more nonprofit work and seeking out corporate clients so that I can get a mix. Editorial photography, in my opinion, with their contracts and with rather stagnant rates, is difficult to make a decent enough living to sustain your family and or business. Okay, so I recommend identifying that market, as the CEO of GroupOn had mentioned, and knowing where your services are applicable. Number 3, view downturns as opportunities. So that may be difficult to understand at first, but he says opportunities arrive from difficult periods. So it's up to you to see how those difficult periods might produce some sort of growth. And not to get too esoteric and to try to keep things very specific. I saw some opportunities during the COVID, lockdown to take my photography and find some different stories that were very related to the neighborhood. And I did produce a couple of projects that were licensed during that time with the help of my agency, of course. So you can also identify difficult times, perhaps when there's contraction, say in the editorial world, where you can begin to branch out and seek opportunities to take that same type of portrait or same type of style of photography and perhaps find a more commercial avenue for it. So perhaps you're going to be doing some portraits for actors and actresses or aspiring people or aspiring creative people that might only pay a couple $100 for a quick headshot, or a quick lifestyle shoot that they can use on their social media. That can lead to something, right? So even if it's $250 for a quick 1-hour shoot of a realtor, a real estate sales agent or something that they can use to promote their own services, if you can land 3 or 4 of those when it's a slowdown in the editorial world, then perhaps you're able to meet your financial obligations, pay your bills. Of course, it goes without saying that we don't always get to do exactly what we want to do. I don't have any desire to only make my living doing that type of work, but I also recognize it when there are downturns, which I've lived through quite a few of them in the editorial world. I've seen several of my clients from the past shrink, and I've had to go out and find new clients. So those downturns, as the CEO of GroupOn says, should be approach at least mentally as an opportunity so that you don't just stagnate and wait for a reemergence of the economy or something. The fourth one that I'm going to mention, I'm not going to go through the half dozen specifically, but the fourth one is to know when to stop. Okay, so it's hard for us that are freelance photographers that have this passion to tell stories, particularly in the editorial arena, documentary style, social issue work. I get it. I don't know if we can ever stop doing that because it's more like a calling. But again, from a business perspective, if you're pumping, just an unbelievable amount of time and energy into something that is not producing financially, the things that you need to do to meet your bills. Those could be just, cell phone bills or your internet bills or, your bills on your credit cards to pay for the gear that you had to purchase. Whatever those bills might be, you're going to need to know when to stop, or I'll throw on as a caveat, maybe just cut back and find a way to balance out meeting your financial obligations with doing what you love. Specifically, the former CEO of GroupOn was alluding to the fact that he gave mention to how he started up one business that was kind of an online fitness business that offered, a few euros over in Spain to do online fitness classes in short periods of time. And it just, as he said, was a fundamental failure because he recognized that nobody was really going to do that. And after he spent, time and energy and money pushing it, he finally realized it's just not going to work. So he pulled the plug on it. I'm not advocating that you pull the plug right away on your photography, but I do believe that we all have realistic responsibilities that we have to meet. And if you're not able to produce the income that you need, and this has happened with photographers that I know personally who have come to my workshop, that during very slow periods of time, they've gone out and done things completely, outside of photography, driving for Uber and Lyft and so forth. And man, I just got mad respect for something like that, because you got to do what you got to do, to pay your bills. And, I come from nothing. My wife comes from nothing, and we know what that is. We never had a cushion to fall back on. So you got to do what you got to do. That to me earns a huge amount of respect. Okay, so try to always keep your photography going if that's what keeps your fire burning, but know that at some point you might need to pull the plug on relying on it for financial means if you're not able to get it going, say, in 3 to 5 years or something. Okay, so those are 4 points that the former CEO of Groupon had mentioned in a Business Insider story that I thought were directly relevant to not only what I talk about frequently in my workshop, but also that I've experienced myself. Okay, I hope it helps. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to be traveling through Europe for the next month, so hopefully, you'll drop back by in October, and I'll have some, new videos to post. Okay, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.